Hey Wendy, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you?
Nice to see you again. Did you have a nice weekend?
It was lovely. It was lovely. Well, it was hard work because I cleaned my balcony, having not cleaned it since last November. So, and it's big. You know my balcony. It's big. So, but yeah, but it was very satisfying to have it done. So I'm pleased about that.
That's good. I wanted to pick up with you about a couple of things today. So I wanted to speak specifically about a wedding that we're working on together now.
Yeah, I wanted to talk
Um,
about that.
and it's really actual, and I've got lots of questions and lots of things that have come up, but I just want to make myself a cup of tea. So hang on one sec.
Okay, I think this might be extremely boring for people watching.
Well, and also quite funny, I guess, because you can see the top
You're
part of
dressed.
me is dressed very formally, and the bottom part of me is dressed in shorts because
Yeah,
it's
you're
hot
dressed.
and we're in
You're dressed.
Israel.
You're dressed for Zoom. You're
I'm
definitely
dressed
dressed
for
for
Zoom. I
Zoom.
was not
Yeah.
dressed for standing up and showing everyone that I'm in scruffy shorts, but there you go. So I'm
Pouring the tea.
tea
Okay.
time, as it always is, and this is another one of my favorite teapots. So just let it brew a bit before I put in some milk. I know there's always the argument what goes in first, the tea bag or the milk.
Exactly.
I want to talk about this couple that we've been working on together. This is an Israeli couple who are getting married the second time round, both of them. And they both have kids from a previous marriage, and they booked the event, I think, was it last September?
Yeah.
Last September. So we've been working on it a while together. I'm doing everything to do with the event, and
I'm doing everything
dressing them.
Absolutely.
Dressing them, dressing the bride, dressing the groom, dressing the parents. Had some input on the bridesmaids' clothes as well. So a little bit of background. They had originally booked to get married in May, and late February, when Corona broke out in Israel, before we had started putting in restrictions, we were already talking about what if, because there was this what if, it's still hanging over us, this what if. The bride was very keen to stick to the original plan, 350 guests in a hall, and wasn't worried about postponing initially. And the groom was, I just love you, I just want to marry you, I just want to do it as soon as possible.
And he was really fixated on the date. He said, a date is a date, and I don't care who's there and who isn't there, but that's the date we're getting married. So he was like incredibly fixated on the date. Yeah.
Fair enough. So that was interesting for both of us, because we both get very involved in that sort of discussion. And I think it's also very nice for a couple to have somebody to bounce ideas off, to not always be, I want this, but to have somebody in between to say, well, there's this, or you could do that. And so the way it's looking right now is we found another venue, a much smaller venue. It seems like now our doors are opening in Israel at the moment. They're lightening up on the restrictions. We're allowed to go out further, more shops open. And it seems like we'll be able to do events for 50 people. The end of May, the beginning of June. We don't have firm dates yet. We're waiting to see that we don't have a second huge leap, a second outbreak. But that's the way it's looking at the moment. And the venue that we're looking at now is a much smaller venue. It will be for 50 people, and it will be outside only. So it won't be reception, chuppah outside and then hall inside. The entire event will be outside. Better for Corona times. Yeah. So that's what we're looking at the moment. There are lots and lots of things that we needed to think about, that we've been thinking about and working on along the way. Yeah, not only about the well-being of the guests, of course, hugely important, and the bride and groom, but also all the suppliers who have to work to put an event together. I'm talking about the electricians, the people who do lighting, the people who install the sound, the people who move the furniture around, the people who build the stages, the florists and the decorators, all of those people who normally would all come together at 6 o'clock in the morning of a wedding, and work on top of each other, higgledy-piggledy, not higgledy-piggledy, but all over each other, very close up. And so we're going to now spread that over a period of 3 days. the florists who normally would have brought all the flowers not arranged into the venue will now be doing it off premises, and we'll bring in a ready-made arrangements that we'll set up. And that's where we are now, more or less. But also, it's not only impacted the venue and the suppliers, but it's also impacted the original dressing plan, what they were going to wear. So do you want to share a little bit about not in
happily.
those meetings? So.
Yeah, happily. So we already had the bride's dress, and the bride's dress was perfect for her style personality. I mean, it was obviously also perfect for the venue that they had in mind originally, but primarily it was the perfect dress for her body shape, for her body geometry, and for her, for her personality. So we have stuck with that dress because it is so right for her that it really will work with pretty much in any venue. The truth is that if she had been, if we'd ended up with something that, if we'd originally planned something that had a huge train and was going to walk down a really long aisle, and we were then shifting to a much smaller, more modest venue, we might have had to make some adaptations. But in the event, the dress, that's not her style personality. She's conscious that it's her second time around, and she's conscious that her children know that it's the second time around. So she wanted, it was very important to her that the dress should be appropriate for who she is in that way as well. So the dress works, and the children's dresses, the bridesmaids, work as well, because actually you can get away with a lot when you're kind of 7 years old. So
really?
That was fine. Yeah, really. Where we were, what we hadn't achieved yet is the mothers of the bride and groom, and actually the sisters of the groom, who I was also dressing. And my intention was, and we had been looking and trying on, and we'd done some shopping trips already. My intention was to find something ready-made. But actually, when the lockdown started and all the shops were closed, it became very obvious that that was not going to be possible. And I do a lot. I do work with a lot of companies that will deliver, and then you can try it on, and if it doesn't work, they'll take it back and all of that. But actually, all of those arrangements were being a bit compromised, especially in the early weeks when people were still trying to find their feet. So I'm well connected with many of the Israeli designers. So what I did was I got in touch with a couple of the designers that I know well, and we agreed that we would design the dresses and make the dresses from scratch. Now, I'm always a bit wary of that, because I think you can end up looking very samey if you go to just a regular dressmaker. But these are Israeli designers whose business had also been impacted, so they were pleased with the work, pleased to get the exposure, and because I'd already spent some time with the mothers and with the sisters, I knew their body shapes, I knew their body geometry, I had a real feel for their style. So it wasn't so difficult to explain to the designer initially the kind of thing I wanted them to. I wanted them to do, and then we were able to do everything else by Zoom. So we were able to do the measurements, we were able to do the proportions, all of that. We chose the fabric, everything was then we could then do virtually. So we haven't had the final fitting. The designers have been working, in isolation. They've been isolated in their homes and been working from home. So we feel it's very safe to have those dresses delivered, tried on by the mothers. Where we'll do all of that virtually if we still need to, closer to the time, and we only need a few days before the actual event to do that final fitting. Hopefully by then we will be able to actually get together personally.
So actually,
it's actually been a real success story.
Right. I was going to say,
that came out of adversity.
All of that stuff that you're doing around the dressing and choices of material and fabric and shape, actually there's nothing to stop you for doing that for a wedding. If somebody just got engaged last week in Corona times and wants to start planning, all of
Absolutely.
that can be done.
Yeah. I mean, one can say, I'm definitely a great fan of thinking about it well in advance, looking at the sort of stuff you like. But I mean, and starting to have those conversations, for sure. Start having those conversations. If you think about the sort of Well, first of all, you can definitely have conversations about your style personality. You can definitely do style personality workshops and all of that kind of stuff. You don't need to, that doesn't need to be done at the last minute. In fact, the sooner you do that, the sooner you'll start building a wardrobe in every respect, not just for the wedding, that works well for you. So yeah, absolutely, you're 100% right. Those are conversations that can start happening well in advance. And similarly for brides, knowing your style personality, understanding the things that are really important to you as a bride to be, it's definitely something you can start well in advance.
For the brides who are watching us, here's an interesting thought for you. Probably if you have managed, if you had already booked an event and you were on hold and you've bought a dress and you're now changing season, if you managed to buy a dress that was a perfect dress for you, the fact that we're changing season or changing venue will not necessarily mean that you need a new dress. Of course, if you want another dress and you can afford it, go for it, girl. It's an interesting that all these things can be adapted. So
yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to say. You know, if you do end up with a dress that's very season specific, or your bridesmaids have got dresses that are very season specific, and you're now going to be in a different venue or in a different season or whatever, talk to your stylist. Talk to me. There are lots of ways to adapt the dress that may mean you don't need to buy a new dress and that it can still look very unique, and people that you can work with to help you do that. So yeah, definitely that's definitely not something that needs to be entirely shelved for the moment. You can definitely carry on having those conversations.
Okay,
cool.
Okay, so I don't think that I've got anything else to say about this one unless you do.
No, I mean, we'll know finally, hopefully by the middle of May, whether we can go ahead with this, and then we can do those final bits and pieces. Just one last question. I've said this to you privately, and I think it's worth repeating, and we've talked about it a bit, that the fact that you know so many people in the business, the fact that you've got so much experience, gives you quite a lot of clout when it comes to this kind of adaptation, doesn't it? So, you know, talking to the venue, there are times in the past, I guess, when venues would not have been as flexible as they are now. And they're obviously going to want to work with event producers like you, because you bring them many, many clients over any season or any year.
I think, the relationship that I have with all of my suppliers, I think that's one of the big advantages of working with an event planner. These people that I work with, the vendors, the owners, and the people who run the venues, and the musicians and the bands, and the florists and the caterers, I bring back to these people every season, event after event after event. I will keep coming back.
Yeah.
Brides and grooms hopefully won't. Some do. Second time round. I have a nice story about that, but not for now. Remind me some other time. It's in their interest to keep me happy. They don't want me to think, oh, that venue, they don't care about their clients, they don't care about the party planners. And so I do. It's easier for me to negotiate with them. They care more about what I think, because they have a vested interest.
Of course. So in a way now, and I've said this to you, I've said this very sentence to you, I don't think people can afford not to use an event producer in these times of uncertainty, because you need to have somebody who is going to be able to build in flexibility into your arrangements. And that is somebody with a certain amount of clout, basically, with your vendors, with your venues, with all of those things. So yeah, I agree. And similarly, I feel the same about my own work. Having those connections, having those long-standing relationships with designers, with stores, with dressmakers, all of those, you need that flexibility, especially if arrangements are going to have to wait until the very last minute before you can totally finalize them.
Right, completely. And still, even though things are lightening up here a little bit, we really have no idea what tomorrow holds.
100%.
No idea.
100% right. You're 100% right. Absolutely.
On that happy note, I will dip my biscuit into my tea. I hope my mother's not watching this. She does not approve. And I'll catch up with you next time.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye.